Yesterday, a group of, speaking of leftist, a group of leftist organizations, including the Southern Poverty or the Southern Impoverished Law Center and the Human Rights Campaign, the largest LGBT advocacy group, announced a legal challenge to the Alabama Vulnerable Child Compassion and Protection Act, SB 184, which was signed into law just last Friday by Governor Kay Ivey. The legislation prohibits doctors from delaying puberty or altering the appearance of gender for minors through radical, irreversible drugs and surgeries. It also ensures that school officials do not withhold from parents information pertaining to their children's perception of their gender if it is inconsistent with their biological sex. Now, according to the SPLC and company, the law's prohibitions, quote, lack a rational foundation, and serve no legitimate purpose, end quote. Here to respond to that and to highlight the importance of the law is Becky Gerritson. She is the executive director of Alabama Eagle Forum, whose grassroots organization has been very active in advocating for this law. Becky, welcome to Washington Watch.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me on. And this was a 3-year battle that finally is over, and we are so thankful that the governor signed this bill.
I was frankly quite impressed, not only that she signed the law, but what she had to say when she signed it last Friday, clearly stating, I think, what is the consensus, certainly of the legislature, and I would think most of those in the state of Alabama. But you have the Southern Impoverished Law Center, which is actually headquartered there in Alabama, filing suit. What do you think about this?
Well, their headquarters is just a couple of blocks away from the State House, and they are there with their lobbyists every day. They are fighting against these pro-family bills, and it just blows my mind that any organization would advocate for medical child abuse, experimentation, exploitation. The drugs that they give these children to change their sexual appearance are actually the same drugs that they use to chemically castrate pedophiles in jail. This is very serious, and I can't imagine why any organization would advocate for that.
Well, and the use of these drugs, despite claims by the advocates of these types of procedures, these are off-label use of drugs. These drugs were not intended for these purposes. Now, in this lawsuit filed by these leftist organizations, including the Southern Poverty Law Center, they claim that these radical, irreversible drugs and surgeries are, quote, safe, effective, and medically necessary for transgender minors. How do they write that with a straight face?
The studies show that if you allow a gender dysphoric child to go through natural puberty, up to 98% of them, this is according to a 2019 study, they will come to accept their biological sex by the time they are young adults. And we are seeing a big trend of detransitioners happening now in their early to mid 20s that started this process around 17, 18 years old. They are now reversing it. Their frontal lobe wasn't fully developed enough to make that very important decision. And so this law is going to protect those children. Wait until they're older to make this decision.
What else are these leftist organizations claiming in their lawsuit that needs to be corrected?
Well, I haven't actually read the lawsuit, but one of the other important aspects of this bill, not only does it stop puberty blockers, cross-sex hormones, and sex reassignment surgeries, but there's also a provision in there because in Alabama, we are seeing a lot of counseling happening in the schools, and the parents have no idea that their children are dealing with any kind of gender dysphoria problems. And so they will go to school and change their clothes into the opposite sex clothes, take on a new name, new pronoun. Everyone at school knows this is happening, but the parents have no idea. So in this bill, if a parent asks to know, is my child dealing with this? They have to tell the parent yes or no. Because there's too much secrecy going on. We are seeing noise machines being put outside of counseling offices so that parents or teachers that walk by, they can't hear what's going on in there. We are seeing flyers that are put out on little tables outside the counseling office, giving directions on where to go if you are gender dysphoric and you want to start seeking treatments. And parents really need to know what's going on in their schools. And so this is a great thing that is in the bill as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I find it hard that we're even having this debate about whether or not parents should know what's happening with their children. I mean, but again, this goes to an underlying mindset that children, belong collectively to a village or to the state, and that educational, quote unquote, experts know better than parents. I mean, this is absurd. It's insulting to parents. And again, as I said earlier, I am so grateful that parents are saying enough is enough. What are you hearing in Alabama in response to the passage of this law?
Well, I speak across the state on this issue a lot as we were trying to get this bill passed over the last 3 years. And people had no idea that this was even happening in Alabama. Our gender clinic in Birmingham is seeing patients as young as 3 years old. Now, they're not getting the drugs that young, but they are getting affirmation therapy. So a little child of 3 years old is actually being affirmed into the misconception that they have that they're being born in the wrong body, which is just grooming for drugs, so that when puberty comes along, they're able to block puberty. And then the studies show 100% of those people that are on those puberty blockers go right on to cross-sex hormones. And then next is surgery. And so parents are so happy that this is passed.
I mean, as young as 3 years old, if we're going to let kids, I think anywhere under the age of 18, to make decisions that in many cases are irreversible as it pertains to their sexuality or their body parts. I mean, are we going to start letting them drive at 3 years old? Are we going to let them buy guns at 5? Are we going to let them start drinking at 7? I mean, we realize that the children are not mentally, emotionally mature enough to make some of these decisions. But yet, because we've carved this out as special, because it's special to the leftist, we allow that to happen. It's insane.
Right. It's dangerous. And I think you said it right before the break, before I came on, that this is a silver lining in COVID that has happened, that people are being able to see what's being taught in schools. Disney is coming out, being emboldened to show their agenda. And I think parents are waking up.
Yeah.
And we just have to get back to our biblical values of raising our children. They are ours. They are no one else's. And we have the responsibility to raise our children.
Becky, thanks so much for joining us. Great to talk with you today. Thank you for the work you're doing there in the state of Alabama.
Thank you so much. Keep up the great work.